At my sister-in-law's wedding, my husband stood up in front of the entire ballroom and declared, "You aren't part of this family. You just came here to mooch a free meal." He even forbade the server from giving me a plate, but suddenly, a silver-haired man in a bespoke suit, someone I had never seen before, whispered in my ear, "Take my arm, and they will swallow their tongues when they see who you are with." To understand how this nightmare turned into a triumph, we have to go back 2 hours. The Golden Crown Country Club was glowing with lights so bright they made my eyes ache the moment I crossed the threshold. It was the most expensive venue in the city, where a single salad cost more than my parents' monthly Social Security check. Today was the Salinas family's big day. They were marrying off Vanessa, the spoiled, high-maintenance sister-in-law who was used to getting whatever she pointed her manicured finger at. I smoothed the pleats of my dress. I had sewn it myself late at night when the numbers from the accounting reports finally stopped dancing in front of my eyes. The fabric was a discreet beige, thick and good quality, but amidst the garish glitter of the guests, I looked like a gray mouse that had accidentally crashed a peacock party. No one greeted me at the entrance. Blake, my husband, had been there since morning, supposedly to supervise the preparations, though I knew perfectly well he wasn't supervising anything. He was just downing scotch with the groomsmen. I looked for my spot on the seating chart, table number 28. I crossed the entire ballroom, dodging ladies in silk and men in suits that were a size too tight. Table 28 was in the farthest corner, right next to the swinging kitchen doors. Heat and the smell of fried onions wafted out from there, and the servers, passing with heavy trays, would bump the back of my chair every now and then. There was no one else at that table. They had seated me alone, like a sick patient in quarantine. I sat there picking at the tablecloth, feeling like an imposter in my own life, wondering why I kept trying to buy their love with my silence and my dignity. At the head table, elevated above the room like a throne, sat Constance. My mother-in-law looked monumental. She was wearing so much gold it looked like her neck was about to snap. Next to her was Blake. He was already flushed, his tie crooked, and his booming laugh could be heard even over the music. He didn't look once toward the dark corner by the kitchen. 1 hour passed, toast after toast. The guests shouted, "Kiss!" clinked glasses, and devoured delicacies. Lobster ceviche, prime rib. The tables were overflowing with food, but the servers didn't come near table 28. I sat with an empty plate. I hadn't eaten breakfast or lunch because I had spent the day closing the company's balance sheet just to make it to the celebration on time. Hunger was starting to twist my stomach. A young waitress passed by with a large platter of fish and cold cuts. Overcoming my shyness, I called out to her softly, "Miss, excuse me, could I have just a little bit of fish? No one has come to my table in an hour." The waitress stopped, smiled guiltily, and leaned in to give me a piece of tuna. "Of course, I'm so sorry. We are swamped." At that moment, a shadow covered the table. A heavy hand landed hard on the waitress's shoulder, making her jump and drop the tongs. "Don't you dare!" roared a male voice. I looked up. It was Blake. He was drunk, his eyes shining with a feverish glint. Behind him stood 2 of his buddies, smirking and waiting for the show. The music cut off suddenly as the DJ changed tracks, and in the silence that followed, Blake's voice rang out like a gunshot. He grabbed my plate and smashed it against the floor. The china shattered into smithereens. "You just don't understand your place," he shouted, spitting saliva. "Where do you think you're going?" I shrank into my chair. My face was burning. Hundreds of eyes turned toward us. "Blake, what are you doing?" I whispered, feeling a lump rising in my throat. "I just asked for food." "Food?" He raised his arms toward the room. "Look at her. She came here to stuff her face." Constance, at the head table, stopped chewing and watched the scene with a satisfied smile. The bride, Vanessa, let out a giggle, covering her mouth. Blake leaned in so close I could smell the expensive alcohol and a feminine perfume that wasn't mine. "You aren't my family, Lucy. Burn that into your brain. You are nobody. You came here to eat for free on my mother's dime." He straightened up and barked at the waitress, who was shaking with fright. "I forbid you to serve her food. Let her watch how worthy people eat, or she can get out." The ballroom fell into a deadly silence. Someone cleared their throat. Someone looked away, but no one intervened. Blake's friends laughed as if he had told the best joke in the world. I felt something break inside me. That was the moment the fear died, replaced by a cold, hard realization that I was utterly alone, and the man I had devoted 10 years to was nothing but a stranger with a cruel streak. The thin thread holding those 10 years of marriage together finally snapped, but I couldn't move. My legs seemed nailed to the floor. The humiliation was so thick I could almost drown in it. Blake, satisfied with the effect, turned around to march back to his throne. And then the air in the room changed. From the shadows, as if he had materialized out of the darkness itself, a man emerged. Tall, broad-shouldered, with hair completely silver, combed back with precision. He was wearing an impeccably cut black suit that probably cost more than this entire banquet. None of the guests knew him. No one saw him enter. He didn't move like a guest, but like a predator patrolling his territory. He cut through the crowd of onlookers, and people instinctively stepped aside, feeling the wave of icy power emanating from him. The man headed straight for table number 28. He didn't look at Blake. He was only looking at me. In his eyes, there was no pity, only a cold and calculated understanding. He extended his hand toward me. The gesture was authoritative and demanding. I, not understanding why, raised my teary eyes to him. The stranger leaned down to my ear. His voice was low and serene, but in the silence of the room, every word sounded clear, like a hammer strike. "Take my arm, and they will swallow their tongues when they see who is with you." I hesitated for only an instant. I saw Blake's unhinged face out of the corner of my eye, the mask of horror petrified on my mother-in-law's face, and I extended my trembling hand toward the stranger. My fingers brushed the sleeve of his jacket. The fabric was expensive and cool. As soon as I leaned on him, he pulled me up, gentle but firm. I stood up. The stranger drew himself up to his full height and scanned the room with a heavy gaze. Blake's friends, who a minute ago were laughing, now stepped back. "Let's go," the man ordered briefly. He didn't lead me toward the exit as I expected. He turned and advanced with a confident stride right through the center of the room, passing paralyzed waiters, passing murmuring guests, straight toward the stage where the microphone stood. Blake tried to lunge at them. "Hey, who the hell are you? Where are you taking her?" But the man didn't even turn his head. He snapped his fingers, and from the shadows emerged 2 enormous security guards blocking Blake's path. My husband stumbled and almost fell. I walked feeling my heart beating in my throat. The sound of my heels and the heavy tread of my companion were the only noises in the huge hall. We went up to the small stage. The band backed away, frightened. The silver-haired man approached the microphone. He didn't let go of my hand. He held it tightly, as if displaying an alliance to everyone. He adjusted the mic and spoke. His voice, amplified, filled every corner of the restaurant, penetrating to the bone. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen," he pronounced calmly, without a shadow of a smile. "My name is Damien." A murmur ran through the room. In the section with the older guests, someone put a hand to their chest. Constance turned so pale she looked like a corpse. She dropped her fork, and it fell onto the plate with a clatter. "I am the owner of this banquet hall," Damien continued, looking directly into Blake's mother's eyes. "And I am forced to interrupt this celebration." He paused, allowing the tension to reach its breaking point. "The wedding is canceled, right now." Someone screamed in the hall. The bride jumped out of her seat. "What? You have no right! We paid!" Damien looked at her, and she shut up instantly. "No, my dear, you haven't paid." His voice became as hard as steel. "The checks your mother, Constance, wrote bounced back from the bank an hour ago. The accounts are empty. Insufficient funds." He pulled a folded paper from inside his jacket and let it drop carelessly onto the stage floor. "You are bankrupt. The music is over. Security, you know who hasn't paid the cover charge, and this woman," he raised my hand higher, "stays. She is the only person in this family who has a conscience. And now, get out of here." Vanessa's scream covered even the crash of breaking plates. The bride, forgetting manners and upbringing, threw her bouquet directly at her mother's face. The white roses fell apart on the polished parquet like snowflakes. What do you mean there's no money? She shrieked, stomping on the hem of her voluminous dress. Mom, you promised. You said everything was paid for. You've humiliated me in front of the whole city. The hall turned into a chaotic anthill. The guests, who just a minute ago were elegantly tasting delicacies, were now jumping out of their seats, knocking over chairs. Some tried to slip toward the exit with a bottle of expensive wine, but the managers had already blocked the doors. In the distance, sirens could be heard. The police were coming fast. At the Golden Crown, they didn't tolerate debtors. Damien squeezed my arm tighter and led me off the stage, not toward the main hall, but through a side service exit. We walked down a narrow corridor that smelled of chlorine and boiled vegetables, passing scared cooks. The scandal remained behind the thick walls, but the trembling in my hands didn't subside. We came out into the back lot toward the service parking. The air there was humid and heavy. It smelled of approaching rain and exhaust fumes. Damien's black SUV was right at the foot of the stairs, the engine already running. "Halt!" A hoarse, broken shout made me shudder. Stumbling out of the same doors came Blake. He was pitiful to look at, jacket unbuttoned, shirt untucked, face red and deformed by rage and alcohol. He saw me and, like a bull in a ring, charged toward me. "Where do you think you're going?" he yelled, trying to grab my arm. "This is your fault. You're a jinx. You brought bad luck. You just had to open your mouth for everything to come crashing down. You cursed my family." I stepped back, hitting my back against the cold metal of the car. In my husband's eyes, I saw not just rage, but genuine madness. He raised his arm, ready to strike me in the face to take out all the shame of that night on me. But Blake's hand never reached its destination. One of Damien's bodyguards, a silent giant with a stone face, caught his wrist in mid-air. The movement was brief and precise. The guard simply applied a joint lock and twisted slightly. Blake howled in pain and fell to his knees, right into a puddle of oil on the asphalt. "One more move toward her." Damien's voice sounded low, but even more terrifying for it. "And you'll be picking up your teeth with broken fingers." Blake gasped, wallowing in the filth, trying to get up, but the bodyguard stepped on the hem of his jacket, pinning him to the ground. "To the car!" Damien ordered me. The door slammed shut, isolating us from the noise of the street. The interior smelled of leather and expensive cologne. The vehicle pulled away smoothly, leaving behind Blake bawling in the puddle, the flashing lights of the patrol cars in front of the building, and the wedding torn to pieces. We drove in silence for about 10 minutes. I watched the blinking lights of the city at night through the window. The city kept its rhythm, indifferent to the fact that my world had just collapsed. Part of me wanted to jump out and run back to the misery I knew, because the unknown was terrifying. But another part of me, a part I thought was dead, was taking its first breath of air. I felt empty. 10 years of marriage, 10 years of humiliation, of scrimping on myself, of trying to please. All of that had burst today like an abscess. The car stopped in front of a discreet 24-hour cafe on the outskirts of downtown. There was no luxury there, just soft music and the smell of ground coffee. Damien chose the farthest table, hidden behind a decorative screen. The waiter brought 2 cups of strong coffee. Damien pushed one toward me. His movements were precise, confident, without a hint of haste. "Drink," he said. "You need to calm down." I hugged the hot cup with both hands, trying to get warm even though the place was temperate. My teeth were still chattering. "Why did you do that?" I asked finally, without looking up. "Why did you take me with you? Now they will destroy me. You don't know Constance. She doesn't forgive." Damien smiled with contempt. It wasn't a kind smile, but the grimace of a shark smelling blood. "Constance is busy explaining to the police why she ordered a $50,000 banquet while her accounts are emptier than a black hole. Right now, she isn't thinking about you." He pulled a thin folder from his leather briefcase and placed it on the table. "Do you really still believe they are rich, Lucy? That mansion with columns, those cars, that company, that all of that is real?" "Of course," I whispered. "They have a logistics company, trucks, warehouses. Blake always said the business was thriving, that it was just temporary difficulties, that we had to reinvest. That's why I handed over my paycheck to help." Damien let out a dry, brief laugh. "Reinvest? What a pretty word. In reality, they've been bankrupt for 5 years. They live on loans. They ask for a new one to pay the interest on the old one. Constance pawned all her jewelry last year. Vanessa's wedding was her last bet, finding a rich son-in-law to plug their holes, but it didn't work. I listened without being able to comprehend. How was it possible? Blake bought designer suits. My mother-in-law changed fur coats every season. And the business? I managed to ask. The business operates at a loss, Damien replied bluntly. I know because I've been watching them for 30 years. They stole my share of the inheritance, but they didn't have the brains to multiply it. But I didn't bring you here to talk about their stupidity. I brought you so you understand your role in this circus. He pushed the folder toward me. Open it. With trembling fingers, I lifted the cover. On top was a document with an official seal. The letters swam before my eyes. 3 years ago, Damien's voice became soft, almost insinuating. Blake brought you some papers. He said it was a formality, something about life insurance or a pension fund. He rushed you, said the courier was waiting. Do you remember? I frowned. The memory surfaced, blurry. Yes, that night, Blake had been unusually affectionate, brought me coffee, joked around, slid a bunch of papers in front of me where there were only sign here boxes. I was so tired after the quarterly report that I didn't even read them. I trusted my husband. I remember, I said quietly. He said it was for a tax deduction. Look at what you signed. Damien pointed a finger at the top line of the document. I squinted. Deed of gift. Act of transfer and acceptance of real estate. Resolution of the sole founder on change of ownership. I read, and an icy chill ran down my spine. The address of the mansion where they lived. The legal address of Salinas Logistics. The warehouses. The land. In the owner box, there was a single name. Lucy Salinas. I looked up at Damien, my eyes full of horror and incomprehension. I don't understand. This must be a mistake. Why is my name there? Damien leaned toward me, and his gray eyes seemed to pierce through me. It's not a mistake. It's their brilliant plan. 3 years ago, creditors started pressuring Constance and Blake. They were threatened with confiscation for debts. To save the assets, they had to put them in the name of someone clean, someone who wouldn't raise suspicions with the IRS, someone gray, discreet, and obedient. You. He tapped the table with a finger. They put everything in your name, absolutely everything, to hide it. Their plan was for you, the dumb and submissive wife, to hold those assets for a couple of years, and then, after divorcing you, you'd sign another donation back to them, and you'd be left with nothing. I looked at the documents. The mansion they had wanted to kick me out of that very night. The company whose income Blake spent on his parties. All of that legally belonged to me. They didn't manage to get it back, Lucy, Damien whispered. You aren't a parasite. You aren't a poor relative who came to eat for free. Legally, you are the sole owner of their lives. You are the owner of the house where they sleep, of the company where they list themselves as directors. You own even the fork your mother-in-law eats breakfast with. The silence in the cafe became piercing. I stared at my signature at the bottom of the page. It was a masterclass in manipulation, and I had been the willing student, signing away my safety thinking I was building a future. And what do I do now? I asked, feeling fear starting to transform into something else, something hot and heavy born in my chest. Damien leaned back in his chair and, for the first time all night, allowed a genuine smile to appear. Now starts the interesting part. Let's go home. To your home. I got out of Damien's car in front of the wrought iron gate, clutching the folder so hard my knuckles turned white. Damien didn't accompany me. He just nodded in farewell. His look said, "This is your battle, and the weapon is in your hands." The SUV disappeared around the curve, leaving me alone in front of the house that, as I had just discovered, was mine, although it always seemed like a hostile fortress. I went up to the porch. There were lights on in the windows. Strange. Blake should be at some bar, licking his wounds after the disaster at the restaurant, and my mother-in-law probably still giving a statement to the police. I took out my keychain. My hands were trembling, but no longer from fear, but from a cold, bitter rush of adrenaline. I inserted the key into the lock of the heavy oak door. The The key went in, but it didn't turn. I pushed harder. Nothing. The mechanism seemed dead. I tried again and again. Useless. A wave of icy realization washed over me. Blake had changed the locks. While I worked, while I sewed my dress at night, while I was being humiliated at the wedding, he was already planning to kick me out. He was just waiting for the right moment. He didn't even plan to let me back home after the banquet. I took a step back. Before, I would have sat on the step to cry. Before, I would have called Blake begging him to let me in. But now, I had the folder. I took out my cell phone and dialed the number for an emergency locksmith service. "I need to get into my house," I said firmly. "I have the property documents with me." The locksmith arrived 20 minutes later. He was a short, sturdy man with a toolbox. He looked at me with suspicion, seeing me there in my simple dress in front of such a mansion. "The owner, you say?" he snorted. "And why don't the keys work?" "My husband changed them," I replied dryly, opening the folder. "Here is the deed. And my ID. Check it." The locksmith shone a flashlight on the papers, checked the name, the address, the passport data. His expression changed. The documents were flawless. "No problem, ma'am. We'll open it right now." The screech of the drill broke the silence of the exclusive neighborhood. 5 minutes later, the door gave way. I paid the locksmith, crossed the threshold, and bolted the door. Inside, it was warm. It smelled of expensive perfume, sweet, heavy. That smell was familiar, but I couldn't place it. I walked silently through the marble foyer. My heels clicked dully against the floor. I went up the stairs toward the second floor, heading to the master bedroom to pack my things. The plan was simple: take clothes, documents, and go to a hotel. I didn't want to spend one more minute in this house. The door to the master bedroom was ajar. I pushed it and froze. In my wide matrimonial bed on the silk bedspread sat a woman. She was wearing my soft plush robe, the same one I had bought with a bonus 6 months ago. The woman was flipping through a magazine lazily, swinging her foot in the air. It was Rachel, Vanessa's best friend, the maid of honor at that wedding everyone had fled from. Rachel raised her head. Her face showed neither surprise nor shame. On the contrary, her lips stretched into a lazy, triumphant smile. "Ah, you finally showed up," she said, tossing the magazine aside. "I thought Blake had already warned you that you have no business here. How did you get in? Did you force the door? That's a crime, sweetie." I looked at her without being able to utter a word. Rachel. In my robe. In my bedroom. The puzzle pieces clicked together instantly. All those nights Blake stayed late for meetings. All those weekends he went to see his mother. Rachel got up slowly from the bed. With theatrical exaggeration, she adjusted the belt of the robe over her belly and picked up a small plastic object from the nightstand. "A pregnancy test. See?" She waved the stick in front of my face. 2 lines. "Blake is happy. We've been together for 2 years, in case you didn't notice, you blind hen. We were just waiting for the lawyers to prepare the papers to reverse the assets. Blake said that in a few days you'd sign everything and we'd finally kick you out officially." "But since you're here," Rachel snorted, "pack your rags and get out. This house is mine now, and Blake's family is finally real, not this circus with an accountant." Inside me, something rose up, but it wasn't hysteria. It was a freezing fury. Every word from Rachel, every movement, killed the submissive woman I had been that very morning. "Your house?" I repeated quietly. "Mine," Rachel nodded smugly. "And my son's. You are nobody here. A maid they forgot to fire." It wasn't just betrayal. It was an invasion. She was wearing my life like a stolen coat, parading around in the wreckage of my dignity. I didn't scream. I didn't lunge at her. I simply took out my phone. On the sticker next to the door, I had managed to see the number for the gated community security company. I remembered that Damien's folder also contained the security contract. I dialed the number. "Centurion Security, good evening," a male voice answered. "This is Lucy Salinas," I said clearly. "Address?" "The estates at Pine Hill, house number 5. "Contract number?" I opened the folder and found the line. 784B. "I am the owner. There are intruders in my house putting my security at risk. I request the immediate dispatch of the rapid response team." Rachel let out a laugh. Who are you trying to scare? Security? They know Blake. They even salute him. You're delusional. I didn't answer. I walked to the armchair by the window and sat down, placing the folder on my knees. You have 5 minutes to take off my robe, I said, looking outside. 3 minutes later, the front door burst open downstairs. Rachel, babe, are you here? Blake's voice was heard. He ran up the stairs, panting, his suit still dirty. You won't believe it, that wretch! He ran into the bedroom and froze when he saw me in the armchair. You! He bellowed. How did you get in? Get out of my house! I told you that! He didn't get to finish the sentence. From outside came the screech of brakes, and a vehicle with emergency lights pulled into the driveway. 3 agents in tactical gear, with helmets and batons, burst into the house. The rumbling of their boots running up the stairs made the walls shake. Who made the call? Growled the team leader entering the bedroom. Blake ran toward them, immediately putting on his usual mask of Master of the Universe. Guys, everything is fine. It's my ex-wife. She broke in here and we're getting her out now. Last name? The guard interrupted, not looking at him, checking his tablet. Salinas. Blake. I am the owner. The owner of the property is Salinas, Lucy. The guard replied dryly. Which one of you is Lucy Salinas? I stood up. Here are the documents. These people are here illegally. The woman threatened me. I demand they be removed from my private property, immediately. Blake's eyes went wide as saucers. What are you saying? What property? Guys, she's crazy. I'll pay you. No, you haven't paid us in 3 months, the guard grunted. The contract is in the name of Citizen Lucy Salinas. The order is clear. The agents advanced. One of them grabbed Blake by the arm. Sir, to the exit. Get your hands off me, Blake shrieked. This is my house. Rachel, tell them something. Rachel, pressed against the wall, suddenly lost all her glamour. The second agent pointed to the exit with his baton. Miss, you too. Gather your things or leave as is. She is using my robe, I commented calmly. The guard nodded. Take it off. It's stolen property. Rachel, red with fury and shame, stripped off the robe, standing only in her lace underwear. She grabbed the dress lying on the floor and, covering herself clumsily, hissed, You're going to pay for this. Blake is going to destroy you. To the exit! Roared the agents. They pushed Blake and Rachel down the stairs. Blake tried to resist, shouting about his influence, about how he would fire everyone, but the professionals worked silently and firmly. They threw them out of the house like stray cats. A downpour had started. I walked to the window. Under the light of the street lamps, I saw Blake, in his dirty shirt and pants, and Rachel trying to put her dress on over her soaked body. They were by the closed gate. Security didn't even let them up on the porch. They banged on the garden gate, shouting something, but the noise of the rain drowned out their voices. Blake was shivering from the cold. Rachel was rubbing the mascara running down her face. I stepped away from the window. The room was silent. I went to the small kitchenette on the second floor and turned on the coffee maker. While the coffee brewed, I looked in the cupboard for my favorite mug, the one I hid so Vanessa's friends wouldn't break it. I poured the aromatic coffee and added a sugar cube. I went back to the bedroom, turned off the main light, and left only the warm lamp in the corner. I sat in the armchair by the window, took a sip of hot coffee, and looked down. There, behind the iron bars, under the downpour, 2 figures were flailing. My ex-husband and his mistress, the masters of life, and I, the gray mouse, sat in the warmth, in my house, and for the first time in 10 years, I felt I could breathe a full lungful of air. But I knew this was just the beginning. Constance wouldn't give up so easily. Monday morning didn't start with coffee, but with a public execution. I was sitting at my desk in the accounting department of the construction firm, trying to concentrate on the quarterly report. The numbers were blurring. After what happened over the weekend, I had barely slept, jumping at every noise in the huge empty mansion that now belonged to me. I expected an attack, but I didn't imagine it would be this low. The office door burst open, knocking a bit of plaster off the frame. Constance stormed into the office. Today she wasn't wearing makeup. She was dressed in black, like a widow, and a dark scarf covered her head. Behind her walked Blake's aunt, a hefty woman with a red face, and a couple of distant relatives I had seen only once at the wedding. "Here she is," howled Constance, pointing at me with a finger loaded with a huge ring. "Here is the snake we warmed at our breast." Work in the office stopped. 10 employees froze, stepping away from their monitors. "Good people, look at her!" shouted my mother-in-law, putting her hand to her heart theatrically. "We treated her like a daughter. We took her out of the mud, clothed her, fed her, and she kicked us out onto the street. An old woman in the rain. She left my only son without a penny," Blake's aunt added, crying loudly. "She took our ancestral home, profaned the memory of our ancestors. Fear God, Lucy. How does the earth sustain you?" I stood up abruptly, knocking over my chair. My face was burning. "Constance, what are you doing? Stop this immediately." "This is my workplace." "I don't give a damn." Constance stopped pretending and lunged toward my desk, leaning over me threateningly. "Let everyone know what a thief you are. You forged documents. You took advantage of Blake's trust. Give us back the house, you trash. Give us back our lives, or I will come every day to kneel at the entrance until they fire you in disgrace." My coworkers started whispering. Someone took out a phone to record. I felt the walls closing in on me. I felt like that little girl again being scolded for a bad grade, only now the whole world was watching. The director's office door opened. Fermin, Mr. Ferguson, my boss, a man who valued silence and order above all else, appeared in the doorway. He frowned when he saw the chaos. "What is going on here?" His voice was dry and icy. Constance threw herself toward him, literally falling to her knees on the carpet. "Protect me, good man! Your employee is a scammer. She left us homeless. She stole everything down to the last cent." Mr. Ferguson took a step back with repulsion and looked at me. There was no compassion in his expression, only annoyance. "Lucy," he grunted, "into my office, now." In the boss's office, it smelled of expensive tobacco and fear. I stood with my head down while Mr. Ferguson paced in front of the window. "I don't need problems, Lucy," he said without looking at me. "Our company works with serious people. Reputation is everything. And now, a gypsy circus, police, shouts of fraud." "It's slander, Mr. Ferguson," I said quietly. "They put the assets in my name to evade taxes. I didn't steal anything." "I don't care," he roared, slamming the table with his palm. "Solve your family soap opera outside the office. Constance is a respected woman in this city. She has contacts. If she starts filing complaints everywhere, we'll be buried in inspections. You have 2 options. Either you solve this today and give them back everything they ask for so they shut up, or you submit your voluntary resignation. I don't need scandals here." I left the office with weak legs. There was no one in the hallway anymore. Security had evicted the choir of mourners, but the sticky feeling of shame still floated in the air. My coworkers looked away when I passed. No one asked how I was. No one supported me. I ran out to the street, gasping for air as if I were drowning. My hands were shaking so much I couldn't bring a cigarette to my mouth, even though I hadn't smoked in 3 years. I wanted to give up. Sign those damn papers, give them back their rotten mansion and their debts, and go far away where no one knew the name Salinas. I felt like an imposter. Who was I to fight them? A simple accountant, and they were the elite, however ruined. My phone vibrated in my pocket. An unknown number appeared on the screen. "Hello?" My voice trembled. "Are you ready to hand it all over?" Damien's voice sounded as if he were right next to me, reading my mind. "I heard about the circus Constance set up. Effective, isn't it?" I leaned my back against the brick wall, sliding down. "I can't, Damien. They're going to fire me. They hate me. They are crushing me from all sides, and if I just let it go, I'm not a warrior. I like numbers, not war." "Exactly," Damien cut me off sharply. "You like numbers. Leave emotions for novels. Constance plays the victim because she has no other cards." "She fears you, Lucy." "Fear me?" I laughed nervously. "She just dragged me through the mud in front of everyone." "She fears you because now you are the owner, and you haven't done what any new owner of a company does. You haven't done an audit." I stood still. "What are you talking about?" "You have access to the bank accounts of Salinas Logistics. You are the CEO and sole owner. Log into the system, now." Constance wants to recover the company precisely now because there are transactions she desperately wants to hide. Look for large transfers from last year. The description will be vague: consulting services, charity, something like that. Look for the date, August 18th of last year. I hung up. August 18th. The date spun in my mind as I ran back to the office, ignoring the stares. I sat at my computer. I plugged in the USB with the electronic signature I had found in the safe at the house. My fingers flew. System access, online banking, user, password, access authorized. I opened the statement from last year. I scrolled down the list to August. Driver salaries, fuel, lease. August 18th. Debit, $30,000. Beneficiary, Sterling Law Firm. Concept, legal advisory for operation. Then another payment, 2 days later. Debit, $20,000. Beneficiary, New Life Private Clinic. Concept, medical treatment payment per employee insurance. I frowned. Salinas Logistics never had corporate health insurance. I searched for the beneficiary, Sterling Law Firm. The database spat out the info. Sterling, attorney at law. Specialization, criminal defense, felony accidents. A shiver ran down my back. August 18th. I remembered that day. Vanessa had come home late, without her car. She said she had left her red convertible at the shop because the transmission was acting up. She was pale, her hands shaking. She drank half a bottle of tequila and locked herself in her room. And the next day, Constance had suddenly sold the lake house. I opened the incoming documents folder from that period. There were scans. I found the clinic report. The patient's name was there. It wasn't an employee. Patient, Lucas Rivas, 12 years old. Diagnosis, multiple fractures, traumatic brain injury. The puzzle fit together with terrifying clarity. Vanessa had run over a child, a year ago, and they didn't go to the police. They paid to silence it. They paid for the treatment. They paid the lawyer who buried the case before a report was filed. But the worst part wasn't that. I looked at the authorizer field, Salinas Logistics, signature, electronic signature of the CEO, Lucy Salinas. They had used my digital signature, the same one Blake asked for, just in case, so I wouldn't have to come in to sign every invoice. They had paid for Vanessa's crime with money from the company that legally belonged to me. They had laundered a bribe using my company. I leaned back in the chair, feeling my arms go numb. If this came to light, maybe Vanessa would go to prison for the hit and run. But for the financial maneuvering, for the bribe, for using company accounts to cover up a felony, the owner and director would answer. Constance didn't just want the house back. She wanted to regain control of the evidence. Or worse, she wanted to leave me as the sole culprit if the family of the child Vanessa hit decided to speak up again. I realized that getting fired was the least of my problems. Jail awaited me. Real time for sins I didn't commit, and the only way to avoid prison was to hand them all over before they dragged me down. I closed the laptop shut as if it were Pandora's box about to release demons. The screen went dark, but the figures, those damn 30,000, and the name of the injured boy kept burning in my mind. Jail. Real jail awaited me. Me, Lucy Salinas, an accountant with an impeccable reputation, could end up behind bars as an accomplice to money laundering and obstruction of justice. My hand sought the phone to call Damien, but my fingers hovered over the screen. What if Damien was using me too? He knew. He knew about these accounts. That's why he told me where to look. That meant he knew I was in danger. It was a game where I was a sacrificial pawn for both Constance and this generous uncle. The phone vibrated in my hand. On the screen appeared Blake. I wanted to reject it, wanted to block him, but the fear of a cell was stronger than pride. I needed to know what they were planning. I needed a way out. Yes, I answered dryly, trying to keep my voice from shaking. Lucy, my husband's voice was unrecognizable, low, broken, without the arrogance with which he had shouted at me in the rain the day before. Lucy, please don't hang up. We have to talk, not as enemies, as people who lived 10 years together. We have nothing to talk about, Blake. I saw the documents. I saw the transfers. I know, he said quickly. I know everything. Mom is out of her mind. Lucy, I'm scared. I don't want to go to jail, and I don't want you to end up there either. Let's meet. In a neutral place. At the park, by the boardwalk. You and me. Please, for what we had. I hesitated a second. In an hour. I arrived at the park early. I chose a bench in plain sight where mothers were walking strollers and retirees were feeding pigeons. The sun was shining bright, and it seemed absurd that in such a peaceful world, dirty accounts and run-over children existed. Blake arrived exactly at the stipulated time. When I saw him, my heart gave a treacherous leap. He looked terrible. Always impeccable, shaved and elegant, he now looked like a beaten dog. Wrinkled shirt, 3-day beard, deep circles under his eyes. He had even lost weight in a couple of days. He didn't sit next to me. He stood in front of me, shifting his weight from one foot to the other like a guilty schoolboy. "Thank you for coming," he croaked. "What do you want, Blake?" I asked, crossing my arms. "Money? The house?" Blake dropped into a squat in front of me, looking up. "To hell with the house, Lucy. To hell with the money. I lost everything." "Rachel..." His mouth twisted as if in pain. "Rachel left. As soon as you kicked us out, when she understood I had nothing left, she disappeared. She didn't want me. She wanted a wallet. You were right. You were right about everything." I stayed silent, but the icy armor on my chest started to crack. Seeing him like this, humbled, hurt. "Forgive me," he whispered, eyes full of tears. "I'm an idiot. I'm a coward. My mother manipulated me my whole life, moved me like a puppet. She came up with everything, putting the company in your name, covering up Vanessa. I didn't want to, Lucy, I swear. I was just afraid to stand up to her." He reached out and with the tips of his fingers brushed my knee. "I don't want war. I don't want trials. I'm tired. Let's end this." "And how do you imagine that?" I asked. "I own a company with felonies on the books." "We'll sell everything," Blake whispered with fervor. "I have a buyer for the mansion, people willing to acquire the company just for the licenses, even with debts. We sell this damn legacy. We pay what is owed and what's left, we split down the middle." He stood up and sat next to me, but keeping a distance. "Lucy, it'll be $150, maybe $200,000 for each of us. We can go away. You always wanted to live near the ocean. I remember how we dreamed of a little house in Florida. Let's take the money and go our separate ways, or..." He swallowed. "Or we can try again. In another city, without my mother, without all this theater. You and me, like when we were students." I looked at the river, remembering our college years. Blake was different then, cheerful, attentive. He carried me in his arms, gave me daisies because he didn't have money for roses. Was there really anything left of that boy inside this broken man? The idea of selling everything and washing my hands of it seemed like a life raft. Get rid of the damn mansion, the company full of dirty laundry. Take the money and disappear. No war with Constance. No noise. "Did you really leave Rachel?" I asked quietly. "I kicked her out," Blake lied without blinking, looking at me with that sincerity I had always believed. "Lucy, I love you. I'm lost, but I love you. Let's sign an agreement. Tomorrow. I have a lawyer, Attorney Sterling. He'll prepare everything. We'll sign a general power of attorney to sell the assets. The money will go directly to your account. You will control the process." I closed my eyes. I wanted to believe. I wanted the nightmare to end. "Okay," I sighed. "Let's sell everything." Blake let out a breath as if a weight had been lifted and rested his forehead on my shoulder. "Thank you. You're a saint, Lucy. A saint. Tomorrow at 12 at Sterling's office, downtown." He left without looking back, walking fast, as if fearing I would change my mind. I stayed on the bench with a strange feeling of emptiness. Was I betraying Damien? Maybe. But Damien was a stranger. And Blake was my husband. Weak, misguided, but mine. The evening passed between boxes. I was packing my things. I decided I wouldn't spend one more day in that house after the sale. I would rent an apartment, breathe, and then see what to do. Maybe I would even give Blake a second chance. Everyone makes mistakes. I poured myself a glass of wine and went out to the bedroom balcony. The city lights twinkled. For the first time in days, I felt calm. My phone chimed, a message on the app, from Damien. No text, just a video file. I frowned. I didn't want to open it. I wanted to keep that fragile illusion of peace I had built in the park, but my finger touched the icon. The video was recorded with a hidden camera. By the angle, maybe from a flower arrangement or a table decoration. Clear image, perfect sound. It was a restaurant. That expensive steakhouse where Blake often ate. In the video was Blake. He no longer looked like a beaten dog. Sitting back, whiskey in hand, he was devouring a steak ravenously. Opposite him, two men. One fat, bald, with shifty eyes. The other skinny, with glasses and the cold face of a doctor. "Did she fall for it?" asked the fat one, wiping his mouth. Blake smiled and shoved another piece of meat into his mouth. "Like a little girl. I know exactly which buttons to push. I love you. We'll buy a car. Remember our youth. She's sentimental. Tomorrow at 12 she'll be with you, Sterling." "The papers are ready," nodded the fat lawyer. "General power of attorney to manage and sell everything. As soon as she signs, she's on the street." "And afterwards?" asked the man with glasses. Blake turned to him. "Afterwards comes your part, doctor. As soon as she signs, you come into action. Nervous breakdown, aggressive behavior, danger to others. Can you certify it?" "Acute psychosis," said the doctor indifferently. "My orderlies will wait at the back entrance. It's a private team. They don't ask questions. A sedative injection, straitjacket, and straight to the clinic." "For how long?" Blake asked. "By law, involuntary commitment can last months. While you sell the assets, she'll be a vegetable on haloperidol. No one will listen to her. A crazy woman? What credibility does she have?" Blake let out a laugh, the laugh of a man who thinks he has solved his life. "Perfect. Tomorrow at noon, I'm a rich bachelor again, and my little wife will be staring at soft walls. Let's drink to that." They clinked glasses. I dropped the phone. It hit the carpet with a dull thud. The screen stayed lit. In the frozen frame was the satisfied, grease-smeared face of my husband, the same one who an hour earlier was crying on my shoulder, the same one who was now planning to turn me into a vegetable to keep my money. The world didn't just collapse. It turned inside out, showing its rotten, worm-eaten underbelly. The fear vanished. The tears dried before they were born. Inside me, a black void emerged that devoured everything. Love, compassion, hope. Only hate remained. A crystalline, sharp hate that hummed like a taut wire. I picked up the phone. My fingers moved mechanically as if they didn't belong to me. I wrote to Damien. "I saw it. What do I do tomorrow?" The answer came instantly, as if he had been waiting. "Tomorrow you will go to that meeting, but you will not sign what they put in front of you." The next day, exactly at 11:55, I pushed open the heavy glass door of Attorney Sterling's office. Inside, it smelled of expensive leather and old file dust. Silence reigned in the reception area, almost artificial, broken only by the typing of the excessively long nails of a secretary with bleached white hair. I walked past her without stopping and went straight into the main office. Blake was already there, sitting in a deep armchair, legs crossed, toying with an expensive pen. Opposite him, behind a huge oak desk, was Sterling himself, the fat man from the video, the one who the night before was devouring a steak while planning how to commit me to a psych ward. Seeing me enter, Blake jumped up. His face instantly adopted the mask of the repentant, loving husband. "Lucy, you came." He took a step toward me with open arms, as if wanting to hug me. "I was afraid you'd back out." "Sit down, darling. Water, coffee." I ignored his gesture and took a free chair. I put my purse on the floor. My back was as straight as a rod. I knew that outside, in the office center parking lot, a private ambulance was waiting. I knew that in a nearby room, the doctor with the syringe was probably waiting. But the fear was gone. Only the cold calculation of a surgeon about to lance a boil remained. "Let's get straight to the point," I said in a flat voice. "I only slipped away from work for a bit." Sterling, licking his lips, slid a stack of documents toward me. "Of course, ma'am. Here is everything, just as agreed. A general power of attorney for your husband to manage all assets and property, with rights of representation and sale. You just have to sign here, here, and here." Blake leaned over me. He smelled of mint gum, trying to cover the alcohol on his breath. Sign, honey, and we'll go home. I'll take care of everything. You won't have to worry about a thing. I took the pen. Blake held his breath. Sterling leaned forward, his little eyes shining. I slowly pushed the power of attorney folder away. I opened my own portfolio and took out a single sheet. You're right, Blake. I am going to sign, but not this. I placed my document on the table and signed with a broad stroke. Then I looked up at my husband. Read it. It's order number 248 of Elenas Logistics. Blake blinked, confused. The smile was wiped from his face. What order, Lucy? What are you talking about? We have to sell the house, not play office. Read it, I ordered harshly. Blake grabbed the sheet. His eyes scanned the lines. For gross violation of labor obligations, for systematic embezzlement of corporate funds, for use of company accounts to cover up a criminal offense. Blake's face started turning red. Blake Elenas is fired from the position of executive director effective immediately, without right to severance. He threw the sheet on the table. Have you gone crazy? What firing? What bullshit is this? I am the director. It's my company. I calmly took out the second document, the bank statement. Yours. Legally, it's mine, Blake. And this, I raised the sheet, is proof of how you took $50,000 to bribe a lawyer and doctors to hide that Vanessa ran over a child. Money laundering, accessory to a crime. The office fell silent. Only the hum of the AC could be heard. Blake looked at the document as if it were a venomous snake. He understood that I knew everything. All his repentant acting collapsed in a second. Son of a bitch, he spat, his face deformed with rage. You think you're smarter than me? You think you're getting out of here? He signaled to Sterling. Sterling, call the doctor, quick. My wife is having an episode. She's out of control. But the lawyer didn't move. Sterling sat there, sweating strangely, staring into the void. His hands were shaking. Blake, he murmured with a strangled voice. Wait, there's a legal problem. What problem? Call the orderlies. We'll subdue her and she'll sign whatever needs signing at the clinic. No! Screamed Sterling unexpectedly, with a voice so loud it echoed off the walls. We can't! She already signed the firing order in front of witnesses. If we use force now, it's kidnapping. The police will put us all in jail, Blake. I am not going down for kidnapping. Blake stood frozen, cornered. His plan was shredding. Then what do you propose? He barked at the lawyer. Sterling, wiping his bald head with a handkerchief, started talking fast, nervously shuffling papers. We need to annul her order, legally, right now. You must sign an act stating you are aware of the accusations but categorically reject them. We'll file it as a corporate dispute. That way her signature won't have validity until a judge decides. And while the trial proceeds, He glanced at the door, implying the arrival of the doctors. Fine, growled Blake. Where do I sign? Sterling hurriedly slid a thick stack of documents toward Blake. Here, and here. This is the act of disagreement. This is the formal rejection of accusations. And this is the request to convene the board. Quick, Blake, before she calls the police. Blake was frantic. Adrenaline clouded his vision. He hated me. He wanted to destroy me right there, but he knew the lawyer was right. He needed a paper to cover himself. He grabbed the pen. He didn't even read what he was signing. He only saw the little sign here flags Sterling had marked. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Blake signed page after page, wishing to finish and give the order to the orderlies. Done. He threw the pen on the table. Happy? Now call them. Sterling, with the speed of a magician, gathered the signed sheets and clutched them to his chest. At that very moment, the office door opened, but nurses didn't enter. 2 enormous security guards dressed in black entered, and behind them entered Damien. Blake stood petrified. He looked at Damien, then at the lawyer. Sterling shrank in his chair, trying to become invisible. I'm sorry, Blake. The fat man squeaked with a trembling voice. Damien has very convincing arguments. He knows about my shady land deals in the wetlands. I don't want to go to prison. What the hell is happening? Blake backed up until he hit the bookshelf. I stood up slowly. I snatched the document Blake had just signed from the lawyer, the first one in the pile, and showed it to him. You were in such a hurry, honey. You didn't even look at the title." Blake looked down. It wasn't an act of disagreement. At the top, in large letters, it read, "Debt Acknowledgement Agreement." "What is this?" he whispered, feeling the floor opening under his feet. "It's your confession," I replied, and my voice sounded like a steel blade. "In this document, you acknowledge that over the last 5 years, you diverted company funds for personal use, and you commit to paying back Salinas Logistics $150,000. Deadline, 24 hours. If you don't pay, total confiscation of assets and criminal liability for fraud." Blake turned pale. He looked at his signature. Big, confident, impeccable. His own hand had signed his sentence. "It's a trick," he gasped. "Fraud. I'll report it." Damien stepped forward. "Report it," he said calmly. "The notary certified your legal capacity. The camera in the corner recorded you signing voluntarily without coercion. You are ruined, Blake, and now you owe my niece everything you have down to your socks." Blake collapsed to the floor. Outside, the ambulance started up and drove away. The client could no longer pay for it. The victory in the notary's office didn't bring peace. On the contrary, it was the starting signal for total war. As soon as Blake left the building, broken and with the debt signed, the Salinas family switched to scorched earth tactics. If they couldn't beat me in court, they would destroy me socially. My phone started blowing up with notifications before I even got home. Social media, local groups, community chats, videos were popping up everywhere. In one of them, Constance, without makeup, face swollen from crying, sitting in front of a crucifix, told the camera the terrible truth. "Good people," she sobbed, wringing her hands. "Look at this woman, Lucy Salinas. We took her in when she was a nobody, fed her, clothed her, and she found herself a rich old man, a crime lover. They threatened my poor son, forced him to sign everything away, kicked us onto the street. Us, elderly people. She is a thief, kidnapping with a mobster for money." The video spread through the city like wildfire. Comments poured in by the thousands. "Burn the witch! Where are the authorities? Poor family, stay strong." I felt like a leper. I tried not to read, but the city was too small. That afternoon, I had to stop by the supermarket to buy bread and milk. I pulled my cap down to my eyebrows, turned up my coat collar, hoping to go unnoticed. But at the checkout, they recognized me. A heavy-set woman in line saw me and let out a shrill scream. "Look! It's the one who kicked her mother-in-law onto the street!" The entire line froze. Dozens of eyes fixed on me, full of hate. "Aren't you ashamed?" hissed an old lady with a cart. "Don't you have a mother? You shacked up with a rich guy and now you rob people?" "Let me pass," I asked quietly, trying to slip toward the exit, leaving the basket behind. "Where are you going?" shrieked the heavy woman and, without thinking, spat right in my face. "Ptwee! Slut! I hope that money chokes you." The thick saliva slid down my cheek. I ran out of the supermarket amidst whistles and jeers. My heart was pounding so hard my ribs hurt. I ran toward the parking lot, wiping my face with my sleeve, wanting only one thing: to get into my car, my little metal capsule, and flee to somewhere where no one knew the name Salinas. I reached my old sedan and froze. All 4 tires were flat. The rubber had been slashed with a knife until it was in ribbons, and on the hood, carved deep into the metal with a nail, was a single word: thief. I leaned against the door and slid down to the asphalt. I had no strength left. The victory over Blake, the documents, the assets, all useless against this visceral hate. Constance knew what she was doing. She hadn't sent lawyers, she sent the mob. "Take it all," I whispered to the void. "Take the damn house, the company, the money. Just leave me alone." I wanted to call Damien and tell him I was quitting the game, that I would sign whatever just to not be a pariah, but I didn't. Instead, I started walking, and my feet took me on their own to an old church on the outskirts of the neighborhood, St. Jude's Chapel. It was always quiet there. There was no social media inside temples. Inside, it smelled of incense and hot wax. Hardly anyone was left. The evening mass had ended. I bought the thinnest candle, approached the statue of the Virgin Mary, and stared at it for a long time. I didn't know how to pray. I just asked for silence. I asked for the strength not to break. "What's the matter? Did you come to wash away your sins, you hypocrite?" The voice sounded behind my back, harsh and poisonous, shattering the peace of the temple. I turned. It was Vanessa, the bride without a wedding. And she wasn't doing much better than her brother, hair messy, makeup smeared, an expensive coat unbuttoned, revealing a wrinkled dress underneath. She smelled of alcohol. "Vanessa," I started, stepping back. "Not here, please." "Where then?" Vanessa raised her voice, ignoring the old caretaker shushing her. "You are everywhere! In my house, in my car, in my wallet! You took everything from us! Because of you, my fiancé left me! Because of you, my friends blocked me!" Vanessa advanced, eyes burning with rage. She cornered me in the small vestibule leading to the courtyard. "You think you won?" she hissed, grabbing me by the coat. "I'm going to destroy you. I'm going to mark that pretty face of yours so no one ever looks at you again, do you hear? You won't be able to go out on the street. Sign the waiver for the assets, bitch, or right here I will." Vanessa raised her hand, her artificial nails, long and sharp, aimed straight at my eyes. "Don't lay a finger on her." The male voice sounded calm, but so commanding that Vanessa froze with her hand in the air. From the shadow of the courtyard stepped a young man, tall, elegant, in an impeccable cashmere coat. It was Ian, the perfect groom Vanessa was supposed to marry 3 days ago, heir to an agricultural empire, the golden boy for whom Constance had staged that whole luxury wedding. Vanessa lowered her hand slowly. A servile, pathetic smile deformed her face. "Ian," she stammered, changing her tone instantly. "I knew you'd come. That wretch didn't stop, but we—" Ian stepped closer. He didn't even look at Vanessa. He was looking at me, with respect and a hint of surprise. "Are you Lucy Salinas?" he asked. I nodded, pressing myself against the cold stone wall. "I saw the documents you sent to the shareholders of Salinas Logistics," Ian said. "The audit report. Very professional work, especially the part about embezzlement and falsification of reports over the last 5 years. Vanessa paled. "Ian, what are you talking about? She invented that! It's fake!" Ian finally looked at her. His expression held so much repulsion it looked like he was viewing a cockroach. "Fake?" he repeated. "My lawyers reviewed every point. Your family is bankrupt, Vanessa, but that's the least of it. You are criminals, thieves living on credit and scams. And that accident a year ago? I asked you then about the dent in your car. You told me it was a pole. Turned out it was a child." I can explain everything." Vanessa tried to grab his arm, but he pulled away as if touched by a plague. "Don't touch me," Ian said with an icy tone. "I came because I saw your geolocation. I wanted to do this in person to avoid rumors." He took a small velvet box from his pocket, the same one he had given her the day of the proposal, only now it was empty. "Although, no. I think you already pawned the ring yesterday, didn't you? I was informed." Vanessa whined, covering her mouth with her hand. "Between you and me, it's over," Ian declared loudly, so the few passers-by behind the gate could hear. "I won't marry the daughter of a scammer. My family doesn't associate with bankrupts or criminals. You aren't on my level, Vanessa. You are just a pretty wrapper with nothing inside." He turned to me and nodded briefly. "I'm sorry my ex-fiancée caused you trouble. If she comes near you again, call me. My security team will explain the rules of conduct to her faster than the police." Ian turned and walked toward the courtyard gate, where a dark car waited. Vanessa stood there in the middle of the atrium. She opened and closed her mouth like a beached fish. Her perfect match, her ticket to the good life, had just walked away, leaving her in the filth she herself had created. She fell to her knees on the cobblestones and began to howl, not from pain, but from impotent rage, realizing she had finally lost everything. I watched her and realized I had no compassion left. Only the last step remained. Leaving the howling Vanessa behind, I exited the church gate. The trembling in my hands was finally starting to subside. It seemed the worst had passed. Blake crushed by debts, Vanessa abandoned by her fiancé, their reputation destroyed. I inhaled the fresh evening air, feeling for the first time in a week capable of going home and sleeping without fear. I walked toward my car with the slashed tires to call a tow truck, but I hadn't managed to take out my phone when a siren wail tore through the street. A patrol car turned the corner, braking hard, cutting off my path. The doors flew open and 2 officers jumped out. "Citizen Salinas! Lucy!" roared one of them before I could react. "Yes, that's me." I stepped back instinctively. "What's happening? I'm the victim. They destroyed my car." "Hands on the hood," ordered the cop, grabbing me by the arm. "You are under arrest on suspicion of aggravated fraud." "What?" I tried to pull away, but the cold cuffs were already closing on my wrists. "What fraud? You're mistaken. I'm the one being harassed. We can clear this up at the station." "Get in!" They shoved me into the patrol car. The interior smelled of gasoline and old dust. I tried to catch the driver's eye, tried to explain, but they kept silent. They confiscated my phone immediately. No way to contact Damien. I was alone. 20 minutes later, they took me to the district precinct. It was noisy, dimly lit, full of drunks and exhausted cops. They didn't take me to a cell. They led me straight to an office at the end of the hall. Behind the desk was a police captain. He had a red, fleshy face and the cloudy eyes of someone who had sold his conscience for an envelope full of bills. In front of him was a thick file. I managed to read my last name on the cover. "Sit down, Lucy," ordered the captain, pointing to a chair bolted to the floor. "Tired of running? Thought you were smart?" "I don't know what you're talking about," I said firmly, though inside everything was contracting with cold. "I demand a lawyer. I have the right to a call." The captain smiled mockingly and lit a cigarette, blowing smoke in my face. "A lawyer won't help you. This is crystal clear. We have a complaint from the victim, Constance Salinas, and ironclad proof." He opened the folder and tossed a copy onto the table toward me. "Do you recognize this?" I looked. It was the same deed of gift from 3 years ago, the one transferring the house and company to my name. "It's an official document," I said. "It's certified by a notary." "That's where you're wrong." The captain pulled out another sheet. "Handwriting analysis. Fresh from today. The expert determines that Blake Salinas' signature on this contract is a forgery, and so is Constance's on the Transfer Act." I froze. This is absurd. They brought me those documents themselves. They signed them right in front of me. "You forged them, Lucy," the captain said with a syrupy voice, leaning over the table. "You took advantage of your husband's trust, slipped in fake papers, or signed for him while he slept, and then bribed the notary to put the stamp on. Although they say that notary died a year ago. Very convenient, right? Loose ends tied up?" My head started to throb. Constance had gone all in. She had decided to rewrite the past. If they managed to prove the documents were fake, I wouldn't just lose everything. I could spend 10 years in prison. "It's a lie," I whispered. "There are official records." "The registry. We'll check it. We'll clean it." The captain corrected himself with a twisted smile. "And I have your mother-in-law's statement here. She says you threatened her, blackmailed the family." The captain stood up and got so close I could smell his cheap tobacco and stale sweat. "Listen to me well, Salinas. You are screwed. Constance is an influential woman. She has contacts in the DA's office. Tonight, I'm putting you in the detention center holding cell, and the environment there is rough. Cold, aggressive inmates. You're an accountant. You won't survive." He placed a blank sheet and a pen in front of me. "But you have a way out, a confession. You write that you were blinded by ambition, that you wanted a pretty life, that you forged your husband's signature out of jealousy. We reclassify it as a misdemeanor. You get probation, return the assets to their rightful owners, and go live with your mom in the country." I looked at the white sheet. A trap. If I signed, I admitted guilt. It was over. In that instant, I wanted to give up. Let the sticky fear disappear. Constance had won. She had money, police, power, and I only had numbers in my head. The numbers. I closed my eyes for a second. I remembered what Damien had taught me. Emotions are for the weak. Facts are a weapon. I raised my head and looked the captain straight in the eye. Captain, do you know that dictating a false expert report is a criminal offense? The captain frowned. Getting smart with me? I see the expert's name on the report. My voice steadied. I spoke like I did when I fired Blake in front of the board. Pacheco, I know that name. I reviewed the registries when preparing the annual report. That expert lost his license 2 years ago for falsifying evidence in an accident case. His signature has no legal validity. Your report is wet paper. The captain's face filled with red blotches. Who do you think you are? I am speaking to you in the language of the law, I said with a cutting voice. I will not sign anything. Under the Constitution, I invoke my Fifth Amendment rights, and I demand it be noted in the record that you are coercing me using fraudulent documents. The captain slammed the table so hard the ashtray jumped in the air. Damn office rat! You think the law is going to save you? I'm putting you right now in a cell full of felons, and they'll explain the Constitution to you real quick. Sign while I'm asking nicely. He grabbed my shoulder, squeezing hard. I let out a moan, but I didn't look away. I won't sign. You're going to sign, he bellowed, raising his hand. Or you leave here crippled. Constance paid well to make you disappear. At that instant, the office door flew open with a deafening bang. The frame shook. The latch flew off the jamb. Standing in the entrance was Damien. No coat, just that same impeccable suit. His eyes were terrifying. In the hallway behind him, 2 officers lay on the floor. They had tried to stop him. Let her go, ordered Damien. Very low, almost a whisper, but that tone made the captain's knees buckle for an instant, and he let go of me, stepping back toward the window. Who the hell are you? Shrieked the captain, hand going to his holster. This is a restricted building. I'll shoot. Damien didn't even look at the gun. He stepped aside, letting another person enter. A small, thin old man with thick-lensed glasses. He clutched a worn leather briefcase to his chest. The captain paled instantly. He recognized him. All the old city officials knew him. Mr. Nichols, whispered the captain. But Constance said you had died. The old man adjusted his glasses and advanced toward the desk. Reports of my death were greatly exaggerated, Captain, said the old man. I was retired, growing avocados on my ranch, until this respectable gentleman, he nodded at Damien, came to tell me they were trying to smear my good name. Who is he? I asked, rubbing my sore shoulder. He is the lawyer who certified the operation 3 years ago, replied Damien, approaching me and standing beside me like a wall. Constance was convinced he was dead and the file had been destroyed. She was wrong. The old man opened his briefcase and took out a laptop. 3 years ago, he began with a raspy voice. Citizen Constance Salinas literally barged into my office. She demanded I backdate the signing to hide assets from a tax audit. I refused to break the law, but I agreed to perform the operation according to all regulations. Just talk, shouted the captain, though sweat was pouring down his face. It's your word against theirs. I'm old school, son, the lawyer mocked. I video record all my transactions, specifically to protect myself from cases like this. He turned the screen toward the captain and pressed play. A grainy video appeared, but with excellent sound. The lawyer's office. In the image, a younger, disoriented Lucy sitting in a chair clutching her purse, and Constance leaning over her. Constance's voice boomed clear and bossy. Sign, you idiot, quick! I have to put this in your name before the IRS freezes the accounts. It'll just be a screen, understand? In a year, you give it all back to us. Lucy in the video asks timidly, Blake, is this legal? Blake enters the frame and makes an impatient gesture. Sign already. Mom said it's necessary. We put the company and the house in your name so the liens don't take them. You'll be the formal owner. No one will touch you. The lawyer in the video asks, Does Lucy act voluntarily? Constance answers for her. Voluntarily, of course she does. Do your job. The video ended. The silence in the office was deafening. This not only proves the signatures are authentic, said Damien with glacial calm, it also proves tax evasion, concealment of assets, and coercion in a legal operation. And it also proves that your expert report, Captain, is a forgery. Damien walked up to the captain and elegantly took the file folder from him. So listen, Captain. You have two options. First, I hand this video and the recording of your interrogation to the federal prosecutor, and you sit right next to Constance for falsifying a criminal process. The captain shook his head, trembling, lips white. The second option, he croaked. You release Lucy immediately, you archive the case for lack of evidence, and you accept the complaint we are going to file against citizen Constance Salinas for filing a false police report and fraud. The captain slumped into his chair, wiping his face with his sleeve. He knew he had lost. Take off the cuffs, he murmured without looking at Damien. The officer at the door, with shaking hands, unlocked the shackles on my wrists. The metal fell to the floor. I massaged the red marks. Let's go, said Damien, offering me his hand. We need to rest. Tomorrow will be a hard day. Tomorrow we end this story. We walked out of the suffocating police building into the night. I breathed deep. I looked at Damien. Did you know he was alive? I asked, referring to Mr. Nichols. I suspected it, Damien replied, opening the SUV door for me. But now we don't just have a shield, we have a sword, and tomorrow we strike the final blow. Constance wanted war. She would get a capitulation. The morning of the reckoning arrived at 9 sharp. The sun flooded the luxury development, the estates at Pine Hill, with a bright and relentless light, leaving no shadows where the sins of the Salinas family could hide. Arriving at the iron gate of the mansion wasn't just a car, but a caravan. In front was Damien's black SUV. Behind, my new car, gleaming in silver, that I had bought just an hour earlier. Then, 2 vans with the Marshal Service emblem and a moving truck. The neighbors, people used to silence and privacy, were already on the street. Curious faces peeked out from behind the high fences. Constance always bragged about her status, humiliating everyone around her, so today the spectators had gathered like in a Roman Colosseum, waiting for a bloody show. I got out of the car. I was wearing an impeccable white suit. No more gray mouse, no more crying victim. I adjusted my sunglasses and nodded to the chief marshal. Proceed, said the guy at the gate with an angle grinder. The spray of sparks looked like a festive salute in honor of the end of the Salinas Empire. We entered the courtyard. The door of the mansion burst open. Constance ran out onto the porch. She was wearing a silk robe, hair a mess, face ashen, without a drop of makeup. "What are you doing?" she shrieked, tearing her voice. "This is private property." "I'm calling the police. I'm calling the district attorney." The chief marshal, a burly man with a clipboard under his arm, didn't even slow down. "Police are already here, ma'am," he indicated with his head to the patrol car closing the caravan. "We have an order for immediate eviction execution and asset seizure to cover the debt to Salinas Logistics. You have 30 minutes to gather personal belongings. Furniture, appliances, and art objects are seized." "What debt?" Constance threw herself at him, trying to snatch the papers. "It's a mistake. My son—" "Your son signed the debt acknowledgement," Damien interrupted with serenity. $150,000, plus interest, plus legal costs. This house has been appraised and passes to the creditor, that is, to Lucy. Constance froze. She directed her gaze toward me. In her eyes was so much poison it could have killed an ocean. "You," she spat. "You finally did it, damn you." "Clock is ticking," I said coldly, looking at my watch. 29 minutes. Stumbling out of the house came Blake and Vanessa. Blake looked like a ghost. He hadn't shaved in days. His hands shook. Vanessa was crying, hugging a fur coat. "Leave the coat," ordered the marshal firmly. "Luxury item, must be inventoried." "It's mine!" screamed Vanessa, clutching the fur. "A gift! Do you have a receipt? No? Then it's property of the debtor. To the van." The marshals worked with efficiency and without emotion. They carried out plasma screens, paintings in gold frames, cases of vintage wine. Everything the Salinas family bragged about, everything they had lied and stolen for, was now being loaded into the dusty truck. I stood in the middle of the courtyard, observing the destruction. Curiously, I felt nothing. No pleasure, no pity, just watching a tumor being removed from my life. Seeing me, Blake reacted suddenly. In his eyes appeared a spark of crazed hope. He pushed the marshal and ran toward me. He fell to his knees on the cobblestones, in the dust. The neighbors behind the fences went silent, hanging on every movement. "Lucy!" he sobbed, trying to grab the hem of my jacket. I took a step back to keep him from touching the clean fabric. "Forgive us! We were idiots! We made a mistake, but we are family! 10 years, Lucy! Remember our wedding! Remember how we swore to be together in sickness and in health!" He was crying, for real. Tears ran down his unkempt cheeks, leaving dirty tracks. "I love you!" he shouted, looking up at me from the ground. "Mom is old. She has nowhere to go. Vanessa was abandoned. Don't be cruel. Leave us the house. We'll live together. I'll carry you in my arms. I'll be the best husband. Please, my life, you are good. You aren't like them." Constance was on the porch, hand over her mouth. Her pride was broken. She kept silent, waiting for my heart to yield. Vanessa had stopped crying and was also looking at me with hope. I looked at the man I had loved for 10 years, and I saw nothing. There was no husband, only a parasite whose food source had been taken away. I took off my sunglasses so he could see my eyes. "Stand up," I said quietly. Blake jumped up immediately, smiling through tears, ready to hug me. "Do you forgive me?" "I told you to stand up so you could hear me on your feet." My voice sounded hard as granite. "You talk about family, Blake? About our wedding?" I looked at the expectant neighbors, the Marshalls, the paralyzed Constance, and I pronounced, clear and loud, marking every word. "At your sister's wedding, you said the only true thing you've said in 10 years. You said, 'You aren't part of my family. You came here to eat for free, and you forbade me to eat.'" Blake paled. "I learned the lesson, Blake," I continued. "You are not my family. None of you are. You are just people who for years ate for free at my expense. At the expense of my work, my nerves, my life. The banquet is over and the waiter brought the check." Blake opened his mouth to say something, but I raised my hand, stopping him. "Damien, the documents." Damien approached and placed the folder on the hood of my car. "What is that?" whispered Constance, coming down from the porch. "Are you giving us back the house?" I took out a pen. "This house is rotten," I said, looking at the facade with cracked moldings. "Here it smells of lies and betrayal. I'm not going to live in this place. I don't need your family fortress." I signed the document with a broad stroke. "I, Lucy Salinas, sell this land, the house, and all assets of Salinas Logistics to Damien Navarro's holding company." "You're selling it?" exclaimed Vanessa, breathless. "Yes, for $700,000, I said, pronouncing the figure that made Constance's legs buckle. "That money is already in my personal account, right now. I am no longer the owner of your debt or your house. Now the owner is him." I nodded toward Damien. He smiled his predatory smile. "And I," said Damien, addressing Constance, "have other plans for this place. I'm going to demolish this mansion. I will reduce it to rubble. There will be a playground here so that not even your spirit remains on this land." Constance grabbed her chest and sat down on the step. "And us?" murmured Blake. "Where are we going to go? We have nothing." I took a small white envelope from my purse. It was thin. "I'm not cruel, Blake. I remember we lived together." I let the envelope drop at his feet, in the dust. "There's $300 in there. It'll be enough to rent a room in the outskirts, in the industrial zone, for exactly 1 month. And to buy food, ramen, tap water, the basics." Blake looked at the envelope as if it were a bomb. "Consider it charity," I said, putting my glasses back on. "Alms for the homeless. After all, you yourself said I came to eat for free. Now it's your turn." "You can't do this to us!" shouted Vanessa, lunging toward me. Damien's guards blocked her path like a wall. "Yes, I can," I replied, getting into my car. "I don't owe anyone anything. I am free." I started the engine. It roared, soft but powerful. Damien got into his SUV. The Marshalls began sealing the doors of the house, pushing the Salinas family beyond the gate. I put the car in drive and exited the courtyard slowly. In the rearview mirror, I saw the last scene of this drama. They were standing on the sidewalk, surrounded by plastic bags with their things, the only thing they had left. Constance, the great matriarch, sat on the curb, crying, mascara running. Blake picked up the envelope from the ground, and Vanessa immediately hung onto his arm, trying to snatch the money from him. They started screaming at each other. Blake pushed his sister, The mother shouted at the son, accusing him of being weak. They were devouring each other like spiders in a jar. The neighbors were recording them with their phones. Tomorrow the whole city would talk about the fall of the Salinas clan. But I didn't care. I got on the highway, stepped on the gas, and felt the car lunge forward, taking me far away from the past. Pity is a dangerous luxury when you're dealing with predators, and I was finally out of stock. Ahead was the road. Ahead was life, my life, and for the first time in 36 years, it belonged only to me. And that is how this complicated story ended. What do you think? Did Lucy do the right thing? Was it poetic justice or excessive cruelty? Subscribe to the channel so we don't lose touch. I wish you the best.